So manifestation is the alchemy of vision, belief, and action. And many of us are running on programming at 30, 35, even 80 years old that we had when we were 5 years old. And so it's really a fear of judgment that it usually boils down to. If you knew that you were going to fail, but no one was going to see it, you wouldn't care. Everybody thinks they need more information, when really what they need is to take action on the information they already have. Sometimes failure gives you an opportunity to grow. Actually, always failure gives you an opportunity to grow. I mean, we just started recording this episode of this podcast and we went 20 minutes and have to start over.
Yeah.
And I know it's going to be better though, right? We're going to talk about practical manifestation and actually the step-by-step process to manifest anything you want in life. But it's also going to be better than we were just talking about because we've had a chance to reset and recalibrate, which is, I think is fine. That's life, man. It's like our brains are failure machines.
Explain that. Unpack that.
I always say failure is refinement. We learn through failing, trying again, and getting it right. Failure implies that there's also a solution that we did not figure out yet. The example I give is if I were to close my eyes and reach for this Celsius can, I might not get it the first time, right? That's a failure from a very objective standpoint. I had a goal of reaching and grabbing this Celsius can, but I didn't get it. That's a fail. So what does my brain do? It recalibrates. It says, okay, well, it wasn't there, so let me move my hand to the left, right? And maybe I don't get it that time, but then I get it the third time. My point is failure is refinement because every time we don't achieve a goal, our mind is designed to actually refine the process by which we can achieve the goal. So It actually gets easier for us.
Right. Failure can just be perceived as a problem and I'm solving it.
Yeah.
I'm a problem solver professionally. That's what I say all the time. Yeah. So how does that apply to, my day-to-day and how I can manifest for ultimate success in life?
Yeah. So one of the core beliefs that I think manifestation hinges on is, of course, belief in oneself, that both the thing that you want to manifest is possible, it's also possible for you, and that you're capable of manifesting it. So kind of this self-belief theme that we talk about. But also a belief that everything just happens for you, it happens for a reason. And we've talked about this in previous episodes and shoots, is I am so delusional, if you will, about the fact that I think everything just is always working out for my good. Good or bad. Even some of the worst stuff that's happened in my life, I'm there must be a reason for this. And whether that's right or wrong, it helps me move on from any attachment I had to the bad crap, right? So here's the thing. Either that belief is true and great, everything's working out for your benefit, or it's not true and it just allows you to move on from the past much more easily and you're no longer emotionally attached to the crap that's happened to you. Both seem like an upside.
And those are the things that make up my identity, right? I mean, what happened to me. And it goes back to the whole victim or victor mindset. And this is the problem in today's society. It's not even a problem. This has always been an occurrence because we always experience bad things. It's almost guaranteed. It is guaranteed. Life, this side of heaven, this side of, this physical existence we live in, death is certain, right? If at the end of the day, all we experience is death, we're definitely going to experience death from a physical perspective, and that's bad. And unfortunately, for most people, we experience multiple painful experiences and traumatic experiences throughout our life. If you experience trauma as a kid, it can be very likely that you become a victim and you have the identity of a victim. Bad things just happen to me because this thing happened to me as a child. And so that must mean that things are going to keep happening to me from a negative perspective, because remember, you manifest what you expect. And so going back to our last episode, if people, haven't listened to that first one or watched that first one, they should, because we kind of gave a 30,000 foot view of the whole manifestation process, some spiritual technologies, how it relates to, let's say the Bible and some ancient wisdom. And then in this episode, we're going to talk about more of the practical step-by-step solutions. So both really play off of each other. And here we're going to, what did I say before? We're going to narrow the aperture, right? Yeah. It's like a part one and part two, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what manifestation is. We talked about kind of defining manifestation in that last episode, but it's also the framework of manifestation. Manifestation is really just the alchemy of vision, belief, and action. And so whenever you take out one of those elements, it's very unlikely that you're going to achieve a goal or manifest the reality that you want to manifest.
Interesting. So repeat that one more time for us.
Yeah. So manifestation is the alchemy of vision, belief, and action.
Got it. So let's break down piece by piece: vision, belief, and action, right? So I have to see it, I have to believe it, and then I have to do something about it, right?
Yep. And so you can kind of, if someone wants to form a mental picture in their head right now, it'd be the image of a ladder. And so what is a ladder? A ladder has two supporting sides. So a ladder has two supporting sides.
Yep.
And then it has the rungs of the ladder. And so when I look at manifestation, I look at it as, and I think I've coined this. I think this is my thing that I actually, it's not too often that you create an original thought or framework, right? And I think I may have, right? I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure I was the first to come up with this, is the manifestation ladder. What is that? Well, you have the two elements that support manifestation. It's the vision, clarity, right, on one side, and then it's belief on the other side. Those are the two most critical components of manifestation. First, having clarity on what it is that you want, kind of what we've talked about, duration, path, and outcome in the past. So getting clear on your manifestation, but then also having the belief that it's possible and that you personally are capable of achieving it. And then what are the rungs? Action, right? Which makes sense because you climb a ladder, you're taking action.
And there's various actions that'll take place, and working your way up.
Yep. So one side you have vision / clarity. The other support is belief. The rungs are action. And then the beautiful part about that is the space, the invisible space between the rungs is the synchronicity, is the supernatural, is the quantum things that happen, the energetic components to the process that you can't really engineer, but when you take action, you start experiencing them. Wow. You start getting luckier, right? I always say action increases your surface area for luck. And so if you could boil down a manifestation into one kind of framework, that's it.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's dig into this framework. Yeah. Let's piece by piece, take me on that journey right now.
Yeah, for sure. So what I'm about to talk about is something that I really unpack in a lot more detail in my 9-day Master Manifestor course. People always say, like, Anthony, you're trying to sell something. Of course I'm trying to sell something. This is my job. I've spent a lot of time and over $100,000 in this information and my experience to bring people really easily digestible solutions and things that they can replicate. And so here's the thing. Let's do a little disclaimer before I tell people to go buy my course, right? Is you can get all of this information for free. I give away pretty much everything for free on these episodes, on my content, on TikTok, wherever. But you have to kind of sort through it. You got to go through hundreds of videos, hundreds of hours of videos to kind of piece together these different things. Or you can pay a little bit of money to get it all in a nicely wrapped package. So before people come at me, of course I'm doing it to make money. I'm doing it to help people. But I also give it away for free, or you can pay to just have it kind of in your back pocket and me explain it step by step. So we're going to explain this step-by-step process, but in order for me to really dive into it, it has to be in a more expansive offering, which is why we have the course. So people could take what we're about to teach and run with it. And I'm confident that most people could just listen to this episode, never spend a dime on anything I sell or any other guru sells, and their life would be that much better. But if people want to kind of double click into everything, then great, go get the 9-day Master Manifestor.
Yep. And I would encourage you to do that because not only has the content within the course from Anthony Serino changed my life and the lives of those around me, but these conversations alone have been able to shed so much light on the keys to my own personal success. So thank you.
Oh, of course. Yeah. And I'm glad, the thing too is I'm so appreciative of you and anybody who trusts me enough to listen to me, but also the people who have spent their money to buy my course. We have thousands of people in the course who have downloaded the Mind Mod Hypnosis app. Yep. I can't tell, I get the chills right now thinking about that. I get to do what I love. And it's because people trust me enough to invest in my services and my offer. So I thank everybody who does that. And so that being said, I'm sure we'll put a link in the show notes or something for that course. They can also just go to theanthonyserino.com. But now that infomercial is over, let's talk about the framework. So we have to always start with clarity, right? Vision. I use those words synonymously, because if you don't know where you're going, well, how are you going to get there, right? You can't just go to the restaurant and be like, hey, I'm hungry, I want some food. No, you're specific, right? You order with specific requirements based on what your appetite is, based on what you want to eat, your tastes, your cravings, So God works the same way, right? And people say the universe, and I want to make distinguish between the two. The universe is the container. One thing that I think pisses me off the most, it's very not Christian to me, I guess, but the one thing that makes me really irks me is people are like, oh, I prayed to the universe. That'd be like saying I prayed to New York State, right? Or I prayed to this can. It's the container. God is the creator of the container. So why would you not just go to the source? To me, it makes no sense to say to thank the universe, or the universe is working things out for me. It doesn't make sense. So that being said, whatever your
people are going to be mad at you, son. People are going to be up in arms because it's sort of the to thank the universe. I just it's sort of the safe version. Mm-hmm. It's safe because obviously the universe exists, right, to everyone. So I think like what you said, you've shaken the tree, and people who believe, or at least are tolerant, are going to appreciate your words and your wisdom. And so
yeah. And like I said before, I'm a devout Christian, Jesus freak, Bible thumper, right? I don't care. I'll shout that from the rooftops. Yeah. I think the reason why most people shy away from specifically Christianity or even religion in general is because they're afraid of the responsibility, right? Christianity tells us that we're bad. We all make mistakes. We're imperfect, and we don't deserve eternity. We don't deserve that foreverness of spiritual existence. Where people who believe in New Age stuff is just like, oh, I'm a good person, just do good, karma, the universe got my back. There's no sense of responsibility, right? At least not in the sense that if I mess up, it means eternal death and separation from God. They think they can kind of work themselves back, where Christianity is like, no, there's nothing you can do. There is no amount of good works or good deeds that you can do to experience heaven, to get into heaven, and to be with God in eternity. And so I think that's why a lot of people shy away from it, which is fine. And so whatever their framework is, whether you call it the universe, whether you call it God, I don't care. If you're not specific with your requests, what are the chances that you get it, right?
Got it.
Okay, so that's the first thing, being specific with your request, just like you would order food at a restaurant. Now, the question becomes, well, how do you actually get clear? Because I'm not just talking about what do you want, but who do you need to become, right? What do you need to believe? What do you need to not believe? Because if you look at the bigger picture of manifestation, is we are always manifesting as a projection of our internal programs. Our subconscious operating system manifests into our physical experience. So what we experience internally is what we experience externally, ultimately. And so you have to ask yourself, what do I believe now that's not congruent with that dream reality? Let's say you want to manifest $1 million. Great. Consciously very good. You're like, yeah, Liz, of course I want $1 million. That would do so much for my life.
Yeah.
But if you believe you don't deserve success, or you don't believe you're worthy of success, or you don't believe you're good enough or smart enough to either make that money or handle that money, or maybe, for me, for a long time, I didn't trust myself with money. So I would self-sabotage my financial efforts and gain. Well, if you don't have the belief systems that are congruent with having that outcome, then you're going to constantly self-sabotage. You're going to constantly feel stuck. This is the whole gas and the brake analogy. And so you have to really audit the version of yourself in the future who already has the life you want, and getting clear on not just what you want, who do you need to become, what do you need to be doing, how do you need to be feeling, and what are the belief systems that you either need to install, enhance, or delete. I just created my very own Hypnosis app where you can literally have me in your back pocket to help you lose weight faster, make more money, and make your success inevitable. I've combined ancient wisdom and modern day neuroscience to create this app where you can literally reprogram your own subconscious mind for success. To get started today, click the link below and grab your free 7-day trial. I'll see you on the inside.
Okay. So it's getting microscopic on who I want to be and clear on the vision of who I believe I can be.
Exactly. Yeah. And so one way to kind of put a framework around clarity is twofold. There's like the duration, path, and outcome, which, guys, neuroscientists like Andrew Huberman will talk about this, is you want to know the outcome, obviously, like what do you want? But then you also have to have an idea of like path. What is the action that you need to take? What is like the actual practical strategy that I could do over a set period of time, the duration to get this outcome? That's how life works. I have to do A, B, and C over X time to get Y result.
Yep. Just like anything.
Yeah. And so the more nuance you can be with that, the better and more confident you'll actually feel.
Okay.
So then on the flip side of that's the practical side. And then the more intangible or psychological based perspective is, well, how do I align myself internally so that strategy becomes easy? So it's figuring out the strategy, figuring out kind of the rough timeline and getting clear on that, but then also using some of these spiritual technologies, these neurological methods and modalities to then align ourselves so that we just do the thing that we tell ourselves to do.
Okay, this seems doable. This seems like anyone who's watching right now could take this first step to become the first support beam on the ladder.
Yeah. So one of the things I teach specifically like inside my courses and things is like getting a subconscious audit of your current beliefs and your current fears that you have running right now. And so when you get that audit and you get a list of all these beliefs, well, now you can look at that ideal version of yourself that you've analyzed that avatar of. You've asked yourself, what are those beliefs I need to have or not have? And now you match them up to your current audit, your current list of programs. And then that's when you go in and then you begin reprogramming these things.
It's probably so hard to even be aware of your current list of programs.
Well, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And just by people listening to this episode and watching my content, it gives them a new awareness, helps them see their own blind spots.
Yep.
And this is why also a lot of people choose to work with me one-to-one, is because one of the things I'm really good at is asking the right questions. And so my job is not, I always say this, not to make you the best me, it's to make you the best you. And that one of my expertises is just like really getting to the nitty gritty, like root cause or the answer that people already have inside of them. And I give the ceiling analogy. Like if you had a leak in your ceiling, most people see that the ceiling is wet. They feel that it's wet. They know there's an issue, right? They know they're anxious. They know they're scared. They know they have the unwanted feelings and emotions, but they don't know where it's coming from. So I come in and I open up the ceiling and I find the exact point of the leak. I help people find their mental leak. So I joke and I say I'm like the plumber of the mind, right? And so step one is asking the right questions. If I could boil clarity and vision down to that. And inside, like once again, back to the course, is like I've done all of this for people.
Yeah.
I have a list of like 40 something questions that I give to people to ask themselves to get the right answers and to have that clarity, to figure out what needs to change internally, what needs to change from a subconscious perspective, from an operating perspective, that then will lead into the action items and the strategy that's implemented to get to the goal or to achieve the manifestation.
Yeah, and all people need to do for this step is just to show up for themselves, to really take that time and be patient enough to do that self-audit. Really.
Yeah. But most people are on autopilot. There's have you heard of the word metacognition?
Metacognition? No.
So metacognition is basically just referring to the awareness of our thoughts, of what's happening internally. So it's self-awareness essentially. Most people are not self-aware. Most people are just kind of going through the robotic motions every single day. The old saying, a leopard doesn't change its spots. They're just kind of going through, doing the same old thing, thinking the same old thoughts, feeling the same feelings, and wondering, why is life happening like this?
Wow.
Right?
You really think that most people are on autopilot?
I guarantee you, if you take a list of all the people that are closest to you, more of them would be on autopilot than those who are self-aware.
It's scary.
I think especially the older generations, like our parents and grandparents, because we were actually now, I'm 35, you are 30? 31. I'm sure you've seen this in our generation. There's a renaissance in mental health. There's a renaissance in mindset and personal development. So now it's actually kind of like it's a class of education almost for us in mindset, in self-awareness. And so we're constantly being bombarded, which is a good thing with like self-help and all these tips and tricks, which I think leads to more self-awareness.
Do you think it's trendy, so to speak?
I think it's too trendy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like almost like the buzzword of it. It's like, it's so TikTokified that to almost like just to say to yourself out loud or to consider it a little bit is for some people's perspective enough, when really all you have to do is like just take that first step to get clear on your vision and then discover your belief in it.
Yeah. And so moving on to step 2, once you have clarity and vision, it's the reprogramming element of this. Our brain is a supercomputer. That's why AI and Elon Musk, like, what are they trying to do? They're trying to replicate the human brain, which I think, I don't know if it'll ever happen to the extent of actually replicating a human brain, because we process terabytes of information in a split second, right? We're assessing contextual, conceptual things that like a prompt in an AI or robot can't do how we do it. And so that being said, we talked about more information, right? We can process information very well. We can process terabytes of information very quickly, but actually having the output that's aligned with that information is actually difficult from a physiological standpoint, meaning everybody thinks they need more information when really what they need is to take action on the information they already have.
Yep.
Everybody, I used to be like this. I used to read for sport, right? Oh, I need to keep reading more books and just reading to read. And I think that's fine if you enjoy it. I still enjoy reading just to read. But what I was finding, I was reading all these self-help books and I wasn't actually applying the information. So what does that mean? I think most people already know what they need to do to be successful, and their pursuit of information actually becomes fancy procrastination.
Talk about it.
Yeah. Just like morning routines. Like, you shouldn't have to like take a cold shower and like, stand outside naked, grounding your feet in the snow, facing north, and then journaling for 3 hours just to get ready to like respond to some emails. I love the farmer mentality. I forget who first kind of talked about this, some other guru, if you will. Farmers just get up, right? They get up early, 4 a.m. They milk the cows, they till the soil, they do the thing. They don't have to do all these fancy, and I think we've gotten so far away from just taking action that it becomes a fancy form of procrastination, like I said.
Avoidant.
Yeah. And so we get off on it because we have this dopamine. We're like, oh, I'm doing hard stuff. I'm hopping in this cold plunge. And there's a usefulness to it. There's a utility to it. But I think for most people, just do the thing first. And then as you get closer to the top 1% in performers in your industry, in your lane, in your niche, then start pushing the edge with some of these biohacking mechanisms. Do the thing. Right?
Do the thing.
And it's tough. It's tough, especially in this world where so many people are anxious, so many people are depressed. It's tough to get out of your own way. And so it's that invisible force that I work with people so that people can get out of their own way, so that they can work through those limiting beliefs and those fears, reprogram themselves, so then they just start manifesting the life they want automatically.
Using hypnosis to manifest.
This guy just keeps giving away my secrets before I even get to it. He just threw hypnosis right at him.
I mean, you're known as the most hated hypnotist.
I say I'm the most hated hypnotist because I've made hypnosis so accessible to people at scale.
Yeah, and I wish that everyone could just understand how tangible the action is.
Yeah.
It's so real through your method. And I just wish that they could just understand. And I think that we effectively are shifting people's perspective. You're making it, entertaining to a certain extent, approachable.
Yeah.
And this can really help people change their life.
To me, it's like the cheat code for life, for success, for any area of your life. I had one client tell me, hey, dude, this feels like an unfair advantage. I'm like, that's exactly what it does feel like. It is ethical. I mean, it's part of our God-given ability to reprogram. And so let's kind of set the stage for reprogramming. I know you just gave away the sauce, the hypnosis, no cliffhangers here, I guess, but let's set the stage for what is hypnosis? What's the neuroscience behind change and reprogramming in the subconscious mind? We all have this ability to change our mind. And that sounds very like intangible. It sounds very esoteric. Like, oh, what am I going to just think differently? Yes and no. We have something called neuroplasticity, which I've talked about ad nauseum online, because even though it's a buzzword, it's kind of cliche now. Everybody's like, oh, neuroplasticity. What does that mean? Well, neuroplasticity is just a fancy term for our ability to learn, for our brain's ability to process information and solidify it. Neuro is neurology, your nervous system, your brain. Plasticity is obviously referring to the fact that it's like plastic. It's malleable. You can reshape it. You can morph it and mold it. And so every belief we have, every program we have, every habit, every craving, every emotional response is a neural pathway in our brain. So there's different neurons in our brain and throughout our body that connect in a certain way to manifest an action, a thought, a behavior, a feeling.
Right.
So when you have a craving for Oreos, you have a specific neural pathway that's firing off through electrical current that then manifests and mobilizes in the action of actually eating the cookie. How I feel about you when I walk in here, I've formed neural connections that are associated with like us being friends and me liking you and us getting along. And what I know about you is all formed as neural connections so that I don't have to relearn what I think about you every time I meet you. So it's an efficiency mechanism that our brain has. It's a wonderful ability so that we don't have to relearn how to drive every single day or how to believe what we believe about our friends and our family. And so you scale that. It's like an infinite like nesting doll effect. It's like every area of our life, every thought, every emotion plays out in this same kind of cycle of we learn something, we solidify it, and then we replicate it. And so very often we're replicating beliefs from when we're children. We're replicating programs from when we're children, things that were said to us, things that were done to us, things that we witnessed. Our brain, with this neuroplasticity, learned this information either by modeling it or by responding to it, formed connections that once they solidify, they just continue to run. And many of us are running on programming at 30, 35, even 80 years old that we had when we were 5 years old.
Wow. It's amazing because you can see things in yourself that you might have seen, like, in your parents and, however it's mirrored through that. It's just, it's amazing to really think about.
Yeah. Most people, the reason they struggle to manifest or achieve a goal is because they're just trying to manifest with outdated programming. They're trying to manifest with the same beliefs and fears that they had as a child. And so that 30-year-old you who tells yourself you want $1 million is actually trying to manifest as the 8-year-old you who failed in school and got laughed at. And so they don't want to put themselves out there. They don't want to take risks. They have a fear of failing. And so no matter how bad you want that $1 million now, your inner programming is not allowing you to actually take the action because you're afraid of risk. You're afraid of failing. You're afraid of judgment.
So how can I escape that? Yeah. How do I escape that inner child?
Yeah. Well, every part of this equation for manifesting goes back to another one, meaning this whole reprogramming thing goes back to clarity, right? Because we have to have clarity to figure out what we need to reprogram. And then once we reprogram, it ties into the actual manifestation of that change. And so once you have clarity on what needs to change, you need to figure out, like I said before, where is the leak coming from? Okay. So if you know that you have a fear of failure, and by the way, what's interesting about fear of failure is that the only reason we're afraid to fail is because we're afraid to fail in front of other people. And so it's really a fear of judgment that it usually boils down to.
Bars.
Right? Like if you knew that you were going to fail, but no one was going to see it, you wouldn't care. If you knew that you were going to post a piece of content that no one was going to see, you wouldn't really care how it is. I mean, sure, you'd have some personal integrity and things like that, and probably a standard of quality that you want to produce. But if no one's going to watch it, what does it matter? So that's kind of ties back into failure. So the question becomes is like, well, if you're afraid to fail, if you have a limiting belief, where did that come from? Where did that leak first start? Because the way these neurological programs kind of manifest in our reality is based on how they were utilized as children or when we were kids. And so if we learned it as kids, and that's where this kind of leak first started, we have to go back to the memory or moment that happened. And now this is where you mentioned hypnosis. Hypnosis is simply a way to access the part of our brain that stores all of this information. So we have a conscious mind and we have a subconscious part of our mind. Now I use these interchangeably and people argue with me, but there's subconscious and unconscious. I actually prefer unconscious. I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but unconscious is a better title than subconscious because subconscious prefers like maybe suboptimal or not as powerful, when really the unconscious part of our brain is more powerful.
Yeah.
This is why we tell ourselves to do one thing. We tell ourselves not to eat the second piece of cake, and then we do it anyways. And that unconscious part of us is like, no, just eat the cake. You can start your diet tomorrow. Like, it's not that big of a deal. So working with that unconscious part is where the magic happens. And that's where hypnosis comes in. What hypnosis allows you to do is allows you to override your operating system and increase this neuroplasticity. It enhances your brain's ability to learn, to solidify new information, to delete old information and to replace it with new, more useful information. And how this occurs very simply, if I could give hypnosis in a nutshell, is hypnosis relaxes the part of your brain that is responsible for your conscious awareness, right? So when we say there's the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, the conscious mind is in the front part of our brain. It's seated there. Now, you can't really cut open your brain and see this is where your conscious mind is, but we know that there's systems and structures of the brain responsible for manifesting what we call the conscious mind.
Okay.
This is the prefrontal cortex. The subconscious or unconscious part of the brain is the limbic system, basal ganglia. We don't have to get bogged down into like the neurology of this, but
I love hearing you talk about it, though.
Well, the reason I do talk about it is because it's not woo-woo. It's not like this weird esoteric magical stuff. It's like actual neuroscience. It's brain science. And I think when people learn that and understand that, it makes it more approachable. It's like, oh, it's not some like weird divination or magical spell or something that I do. I just work with my own brain structure. So what hypnosis does, hypnosis allows you to get into an altered state of consciousness where you bypass that critical conscious part of the brain so that you can access the unconscious database. So we kind of take the sense of agency and volition out of the equation so we don't get in our own way, and we communicate with the unconscious part of the mind directly. Basically, you're putting in new inputs so you can get new outputs. You have inputs from children that are now running that program of fear and anxiety and self-doubt. And we, with hypnosis, are able to install new inputs of confidence, of success, of safety, of love, whatever it may be that's more positive, which will then manifest in the output of the right action and the right manifestation.
Wow. You know, what I picked up from you before was that essentially you have to ask yourself, or, you know, have a coach like yourself ask you the right questions to really uncover what exactly your fear actually is, right? Yeah. Because it stood out to me when you said that my fear of failure actually is my fear of judgment. Yeah. If I failed in private, I wouldn't have a fear at all.
Yeah.
And then being able to figure out how to bypass the volition, as you call it, to basically avoid my own self-sabotage in order to, trick my mind into becoming the person that I need with belief in what my vision is.
Yeah. So a good example, let's say fear of failure, where someone doesn't believe they're smart enough. And some of these programs overlap, they tie into the same thing. I was working with a guy who came to me for public speaking, and he said to me, he's like, I gotta get in front of these people all the time, because he ran a company and he had to meet in front of his employees very, very often. I think it was weekly, if I remember the cadence correctly. And no matter how long he'd been doing it, he still felt anxious every single time. Really? Anytime he got up in front of people, he had this like panic response internally. He was still able to do it, but he felt really uncomfortable doing it. And so I was like, okay, let's see where this came from. Let's use hypnosis to go, what's the data? What's the algorithm that's actually running this program and making it manifest in the form of panic and anxiety when you're in this circumstance? And so what ended up happening is we were able to look back below the threshold of conscious awareness. We were able to get back to the first memory where his brain learned that public speaking is bad.
Wow.
And so what was that memory? Well, he went back to a time when he was in like second or third grade and the teacher asked a question and he raised his hand to answer because he was so confident he knew the answer. He raised his hand. He stood up to answer the question. And what happened? He got the question wrong. Here he was so happy. He thought he knew it. He was so confident. He was willing to put himself out there and speak in front of the class. And his teacher told him he got it wrong. And then the kids next to him started saying stuff and laughing and making fun of him, right? And so in that split second, his brain learned that, hey, putting yourself out there is bad. Speaking in front of other people is bad. And so for the rest of his life, his brain was trying to protect him. His mind was trying to protect him from feeling the embarrassment, the shame, and all the other unwanted feelings and emotions he experienced in that time. And so even though consciously he said, hey, I need to speak in front of my employees because it's good for the business and it's going to make more money or whatever it may be, those conscious desires were misaligned with his subconscious or unconscious influences that he learned as a child. And so he self-sabotaged. What I always say is self-sabotage is not self-sabotage, self-protection. So he was actually self-protecting by having this anxious, fearful response in a public setting because of what he learned that public setting and what that action actually got him in the past was pain.
Oh, wow. It's like the evidence, that's evidence enough that, that is a learned program. And, I would challenge and say, why is the brain so responsive to such, personally historic data, right? Yeah. Because our brain has, cemented that memory from that fear or from that event that long ago. And now it's still, afflicting me every day. Like, wouldn't my brain also just teach itself that, hey, every time I talk to my, 10 or 20 employees, that's bettering my business. My brain knows that. So I'm going to start to, that fear of public speaking might start to dissipate.
Yeah. So good question. Sometimes that does happen. We build enough evidence. The unconscious mind works in evidence, meaning if we have enough evidence for the contrary, it'll change the program. But usually conscious evidence isn't enough. This is why telling ourselves to do something or convincing ourselves consciously does not work. This is the power of hypnosis. This is the power of subconscious reprogramming. You can convince the unconscious part of the brain and you bypass that critical conscious faculty, that filter. So yes and no is the answer to that question. But back to the leak in the ceiling analogy, most people just try to fix the ceiling. They paint over the ceiling with the evidence. Like they tell themselves all these things consciously. They do the vision boards, the affirmations, the mantras, the meditation. But what if there's a leak? What ends up happening?
You're gonna have to redo the roof.
You just keep redoing it, and you keep kicking the can down the road. Yeah. So yes, you can kind of force outcomes, but ultimately you'll backslide and you'll go back to it. You'll revert back to your inherent like natural programming. Not even natural, but whatever you learned first becomes the modus operandi.
Yeah, I mean,
it becomes the MO. Becomes your MO. Becomes your standard operating system. And so you can't just place another program on top of a program that's running. You have to replace it.
Can't overwrite the program.
Yeah, you can overwrite it. You can't have both programs running at the same time.
You can't have both.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack here. And this is why I really encourage people to, one, do their own research, two, like go back through the other episodes, because I'm intentionally and unintentionally giving different pieces to the puzzle, because you have to be able to digest each piece in and of itself. And if I just said, hey, we are giving the whole framework and the process, but there's so many nuances to it that need to be digested individually. And there's also what happens, I always say knowledge is not just information, it's the application of information, as I've said before. You have to apply these different things in real time because there's a lot of things that I can't even articulate. This goes back to like biblical principles and spiritual understanding and wisdom. There's so many things spiritually that I wish I could explain to you right now and explain to the viewers and listeners, that it just would come out like total craziness because I don't even have the words to articulate it,
That's what I want to hear.
I know.
I want to hear about what you think is crazy.
I know. Well, there'll be a time and place for it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right. Well, just put a cap on this, from your perspective and understanding, you addressed the 3 pillars, so to speak, of the practical manifestation, and just kind of sum it up for us here. Yeah.
Let's land the plane. I tend to like fly people up and kick them out of the plane without the without a parachute, and then
that's how birds learn to fly.
Yeah, exactly. I'm helping people fly right now with no wings. No.
You're Superman.
Let's give them the wings. Let's give them the parachute and the wings, not just to float back down, but to soar. How's that? So you have clarity, get massive clarity. I joke in the course. I say this is not your grandma's clarity, her brand of clarity. And then step 2 is reprogramming using hypnosis, getting that audit of your belief systems, your fears, your total subconscious operating system, and then upgrading it via hypnosis, via these unconscious modalities and spiritual technologies that we talk about. And then step 3 is it ultimately happens on its own, which is the action. Action shouldn't be hard. Sure, some action will be hard, but it's the perspective of the action. And I just remembered the question you asked about why does the brain do all of this? Why does it automate and why does it make it so hard to do this stuff consciously of overwriting and things like that? It's because at a very basic level, our brain is trying to help us survive. That's it, right? It wants one thing, and that's for us to survive and for our human species to advance and to continue to exist. And so how does it do that? Well, it's constantly navigating between pain and pleasure. Pleasure equals survival, pain equals death. So any pain equals death, any pleasure equals survival.
That's such a bad function, right? Because pain is so natural, and pain is how you become better.
Yeah. It's the paradox of our existence is that pain equals or usually tends to lead to growth, but it also leads to death.
That is the paradox of it. Wow. And why is my difficulty, and whether it's struggle or failure, why do I perceive that as pain?
Yeah.
Why is my workload, why is my, call it academic pursuit or my study or my, hard work, why is that perceived as pain?
Yeah. Well, it's different for everybody. And it goes back to our initial programming. I've had some clients who come to me who they're so stressed because they do work so hard and they can't get out of the work. They're doing really hard work, but they've been programmed from a young age that this is what you do. This is life. You got to work hard to make money, right? For example, I saw my mom work 3 jobs. She was a single mom, worked 3 jobs, and we barely had any money. She was still on food stamps for a period of time. And so I learned as a program that you have to work really hard and still just have enough, sometimes not even enough. And so that program manifested in my reality. So that comes down to also a perception and what you believe and what was developed.
Man, it's like 2 kinds of pain. There's probably 100 kinds of pain, but
it all boils down to just pain. It's like whether I touch the hot stove and have a physical pain or I get made fun of and have an emotional pain. It's all just pain, and our brain is navigating away from it.
But it's so evident why touching the hot stove pain is survival instinct.
Yeah.
But it's counterintuitive for emotional pain to be an instinct, right?
Well, people don't really realize, and they will now after I say this, is that the emotional pain is a physiological, biological response from a neurochemistry standpoint, even from a nervous system, just like physical pain.
But it's not saving me.
Yeah.
Like a fear of the hot stove is saving me. Fear of, the pain of being upset over getting a bad grade or, fear of failure or fear of, or, do you know what I'm getting at here?
Yeah. And the question I would pose to you is, okay, let's say we go back to tribal times, right? What would happen if your tribe didn't like you and you were judged? What would that mean for you?
I guess I'd be banished and I'd be outcast and from the tribe. So that would be essentially dangerous to my survival.
Of course. Yeah. It meant pretty much certain death, right? And so we have a lot of these basic tribal instincts from a biological survival standpoint in our neurology, in our biology. And that's it's crazy because that's as simple as it is. And once you understand that everything is mobilizing us away from pain and towards pleasure, you begin to manipulate the in-between. And you realize that pain and pleasure are largely perceptions. There is objective physical pain and pain responses that we have, but emotional pain is more subjective. And I think that's kind of what you were alluding to, right? It's like some people have a lot of psychological discomfort, fear around skydiving, right? I would never skydive because I just not my thing. To me, there's no point. And also there's a high risk, or I guess a semi-high risk of something bad happening, much higher than if I stay on the ground. Right?
I would never.
But some people are like, hell yeah, let's skydive. So someone is willing to go against their inherent survival mechanism. It's because they learned probably as a kid that taking risks is fun, and they were encouraged to do fun things by their dad, by like going off jumps on their motorcycle or doing crazy things, or they saw their dad do it or whoever, right? And so they have a perception that risk is fun, it's good, it's beneficial, and it manifests in the form of like just jumping out of a plane. So it's all perception. And that's also what hypnosis and these subconscious modalities do, is it shifts perception at a psychological and neurological level.
Well said, sir.
Yeah. So if you believe getting on camera is fun, right? If you genuinely, your unconscious mind is like, yeah, I'm going to get on camera. This is fun. I believe in myself. I know what I'm talking about. I'm smart enough. It's going to make me more money. And those are inherent belief systems internally. Well, then of course you're going to get on camera. If you tell yourself to get on camera, but you're like thinking, what are people going to think about me? Oh, I don't really know what I'm talking about. No one wants to hear what I have to say. I don't really feel sure about myself. I feel like an imposter. And they're like, you're low energy. Well, then of course you're not gonna do the thing. You're not gonna get on camera. And
then of course you're not gonna be perceived as anything other than you thought you were going to be because of your energy, like you mentioned. So yeah man, it's these are the main bad. Just so you know, like you're doing God's work because these are the main problems with our generation today. Yeah. Like if this reaches enough people, this is going to save people.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, bro.
Yeah.
And you might be a little bit more out of touch with it than I. Yeah. Because maybe, the 4 years between us, or maybe, the level that you've risen to, or the fact that I take so many goddamn meetings with people that like, dude, I'm telling you, man, if this reaches the amount of people that I believe it will, you will usher in a new generation.
I'm hoping so, man. And like I said, there's been a renaissance. It's not just me. There's a lot of great content creators, and I need to do a better job at giving myself more credit for what I put out there. But I haven't figured 100% out yet. I'm much better than I was 10 years ago. And if I could boil it down to one thing, it's like really step into the authority that we've been granted. And like, once again, from a Christian perspective, I believe God's authority grants us authority. We have dominion over this. We can manifest, we can create, and we should create. We should be on the offense, right? We should be staring at the faces of our adversaries, both physical and spiritual, and commanding victory over them, right? Speak it over. God spoke this into existence, right? Everything we see, touch, feel, it's like was spoken into existence. Why not speak over our own lives? And the last thing I'll end with is like we talk about faith, right? It says, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. And so the more you're in scripture, the more you're studying these biblical philosophies and spiritual truths, the more authority you end up having, the more confidence you end up feeling, the more power you step into. And that's when like life feels like it's not easy mode, but you move much more intentionally and confidently that way.
You know what to do, guys.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you trusting me with your time. And if you love this content, you want to check out more of it, then you're going to want to watch one of these other videos above. We've got a bunch of great content and videos on hypnosis, subconscious reprogramming, and general mindset philosophies, techniques, and methods. So check those out. And also, if you haven't done so already, make sure you grab my brand new hypnosis app. It's called Mind Mod. It has audios for everything from success to weight loss to even quitting smoking. It's all on there. So when you click the link in the description below, you get a free 7-day trial when you download today.